Hello, friends. So, we are into the day 5 of the 60-day program for Mains 2025 philosophy option. In the last 4 days, we have been discussing about topic number 1, topic number 2, and topic number 3. Some questions we discussed yesterday, and the remaining question we'll be discussing today. Okay. So, we have 5 questions today to discuss. So, let's start with the question number 1. The question was asked in 2024, and it was from the social contract theory. Question says, present a brief account of the origin and development of social contract theory. It is a 10 marker. Okay. So as we have already told you, हमने पहले भी सेशन में आपको बताया है, the best way to start a question is to explain the key concept. Okay. So in this case, please explain the key concept in the introduction. Let's use a different pen. Here the key concept is social contract. What is social contract? In political philosophy, social contract is basically the explanation of how legitimate political authority arised after the mutual agreement among the different group of citizens to form a society and government. So different philosophers have given their view of this contract, that is mutual agreement among the different people who existed in the state of nature, and eventually they formed a society and government for protection of their rights and gave this legitimate political authority to the government and the state, right? So we'll explain this. We'll say that in political philosophy, social contract explains how legitimate political authority arises through a mutual agreement. This mutual agreement is called as contract among the individuals, क्योंकि आपको ये पता है कि when there was no society, we were living as atomized individuals. ठीक है. स्टेट ऑफ नेचर में शुरुआत में जब हमारी सोसाइटी नहीं थी, स्टेट नहीं था, गवर्नमेंट नहीं थी, तब हम लोग कैसे जीते थे, जैसे बाकी स्पीशीज जीते हैं, डिफरेंट डिफरेंट. बट फिर हमने इस कॉन्ट्रैक्ट को, एक अग्रीमेंट हमने एक दूसरे के बीच में किया, दैट वी वांट टू फॉर्म अ सोसाइटी. दिस वाज एन अग्रीमेंट बिटवीन इंडिविजुअल्स टू फॉर्म अ सोसाइटी एंड गवर्नमेंट. Government is basically who will rule over them, right? So what does social contract signify? Contract signify the between transition from the state of nature. The state of nature is the state where there was no political authority. Humans were totally free. There was anarchy, right? So this was the condition of no political authority to a civil society. A society where we have a political authority and there are citizens. In the topic number 3, individual and state, we have discussed that individual in this topic means citizen, whereas state means the sovereign authority to which the citizens owe allegiance, right? So this way you'll start the question, introduction. Then we'll talk about the question asks about the origin and development of social contract theory. So you have to give the origin, right, in the body part. We'll be providing you the model answer regarding this, so we need not write. We'll not be writing all the points here, but just the brief reference. Like from ancient times only, social contract had some underpinnings, like sophist thinkers. You must have heard about sophists who existed alongside Socrates, Plato. Sophists used to talk about a contract. There was a Stoic thinkers who were talking about natural law, right? And it has some early ideas of social contract. Even if you talk about India, in India also, uh, the Kautilya used to talk about a contract, right? That people wanted to escape from the state of nature, this Matatsya Nyaya. So they entered into a contract, right? But this was with the divine, and then state came. The state had divine underpinnings. Then the most significant phase in the development of social contract theory came when Thomas Hobbes, you must be knowing about Hobbes, your Thomas Hobbes, he was there in 16th and 17th century. उनकी किताब थी लेवियाथन और उनका जो कंसेप्ट था सोवरेन का वो इसको भी उसने बोला लेवियाथन ठीक है उस लेवियाथन में उसने बोला कि ये जो स्टेट ऑफ नेचर था when there was no political authority it was a state of war of all against all right and since people wanted to escape this chaos individuals have surrendered all their rights to a sovereign authority in exchange for security and that's why absolute monarchy he justified for the sake of peace to escape this chaos. The state of nature, he says, was brutish. Human nature was brutish, nasty, and the state of nature was chaotic. So we wanted to go away from it. We wanted to have peace. That's why state came into being. Then we had another contractarian philosopher, Locke. So Locke had written a book, Two Treaties of Government. Here he talked about uh, the social contract. He said that individuals entered into a contract to safeguard their natural rights, life, liberty, and property. Another one was Jean Jacques Rousseau. Rousseau, in his book The Social Contract, which was published around 1764, he argued for general will, that we should obey the state because state represents our general will, the general consent. And he talked about participatory democracy, popular sovereignty, right, citizens assembly, direct democracy, etc. So these were the important thinkers in uh, social contract theory, right? And if we talk about the relevance, social contract theory definitely influenced the liberal democracies, constitutionalism, democratic governance, human rights discourses, everything. So this you can highlight the relevance also. And finally, you can conclude that the social contract theory uh, is important because it talked about the freedom and equality of man. And if you want, you can also quote Rousseau that which says that man is born free, but everywhere is in chains. So these kind of quotations you can use in conclusion. Okay. So main thinkers will come that we have already told you. You will get the model pointers in the form of PDF. Next question is: do you agree with the view that very interesting question? Do you agree with the view that Aristotle was more successful than Plato in steering a middle course between statism and individualism, discussed with arguments? एरिस्टोटल कौन है आपको पता होगा एरिस्टोटल इज कॉल्ड एज द फादर ऑफ पॉलिटिकल साइंस एरिस्टोटल वो व्यक्ति है जिसको फादर ऑफ पॉलिटिकल साइंस बोला गया है और ऐसे ही नहीं बोला गया आज तक जितनी भी फॉर्म ऑफ गवर्नमेंट रही है ठीक है एरिस्टोटल ने सारी तरह की फॉर्म ऑफ गवर्नमेंट की बात कर दी थी द गवर्नमेंट बाय वन विच इज मोनार्की गवर्नमेंट बाय फ्यू इज ओलिगार्ची गवर्नमेंट बाय मैनी इज डेमोक्रेसी जितने भी तरह की फॉर्म की गवर्नमेंट हो सकती है उन सब की एरिस्टोटल ने बात करी थी और उसने सारी कि इंडिविजुअल और स्टेट के बीच में क्या रिलेशन होना चाहिए स्टेट की क्या अथॉरिटी होती है इन सब पे बहुत ही प्रैक्टिकल व्यूज दिए थे एरिस्टोटल ने राइट तो सबसे पहले क्या करेंगे हम अगेन इंपॉर्टेंट चीजों को डिफाइन करेंगे व्हाट इज स्टेटिज्म व्हाट इज इंडिविजुअलिज्म स्टेटिज्म क्या है स्टेटिज्म मीन्स इट इज अ थ्योरी विच प्रायोरिटाइजेस the authority of a state over individual freedom, whereas individualism means emphasis on personal autonomy and personal freedom. Personal autonomy and personal freedom, right? If we talk about Plato, then Plato definitely leaned towards statism. He leaned towards statism. in his ideal state, right? In the world of idea, there is a idea of a state, a perfect state, and the philosopher king can implement that ideal state in this world because he has wisdom, and this state will be the epitome of wisdom. So it's important that individuals obey the commands of the state because the lower reason should surrender to the higher reason. Higher reason is state, lower reason is individuals. But Aristotle tried to balance this. Now see, on the one hand there was Plato, on the other hand there were sophists. Sophists were talking about individualism. Sophists were talking about individualism. There was Protagoras who said about freedom, right? Heraclitus. Sophists were talking about individualism. Plato was talking about statism. Aristotle balanced the views. Aristotle balanced by acknowledging the moral worth of individuals and also the authority of state within the political community. Okay. So in this question, first of all, you will give the views of Plato. That Plato, in his book Republic, proposed a rigid class-based system, right? And he gave you can say highest. He declared that state represents the highest reason, and the collective good will be determined by the state. Individual's role will be subordinated to the collective good, and good will be determined by the philosopher king or the state. Right? The individuals were subordinated. You know that Plato hated common man and common sense. Common man और common sense दोनों से hate करता था वो. उसको rationality, reason, rational insight, okay, wisdom उससे प्यार था. उसको उसको महत्व देता था. उसका बहुत बड़ा कारण भी था कि उसने सोफिस्ट जैसे गधे भी देखे थे उसने जो फालतू की बातें करते थे जो बोलते थे कि नॉलेज इज सब्जेक्टिविटी. भाई नॉलेज सब्जेक्टिव हो जाएगी तो फिर फिलोसफी में हम कर क्या रहे हैं, राइट? तो प्लेटो वाज जस्टिफाइड इन दैट. बट देन एरिस्टोटल केम. एरिस्टोटल सेड, एंड एरिस्टोटल की किताब है द पॉलिटिक्स, जिस पॉलिटिक्स की नाम किताब का नाम ही है पॉलिटिक्स. ही क्रिटिसाइज्ड प्लेटोज एक्सट्रीम कलेक्टिविज्म कि ये जो कलेक्टिविस्ट अप्रोच है प्लेटो की, दिस इज impractical, it is very metaphorical, poetic, it does not have any empirical ground. He said that individuals' excessive unity turns a state into a household, and that's why he proposed a middle ground, middle path. He talked about a mixed constitution, right? He said that there should be private property. So प्लेटो ने तो प्राइवेट प्रॉपर्टी को खत्म कर दिया था. ही टॉक्ड अबाउट कलेक्टिविज्म, देयर शुड नॉट बी एनी प्राइवेट प्रॉपर्टी. ही टॉक्ड अबाउट प्राइवेट प्रॉपर्टी. He said that state is the means to achieve highest good and not to suppress the individuality. State is means and not should not suppress the individuality, right? He recognized that individuals seek eudaimonia, that is flourishing through participation in political life. Man is a political animal, social animal, he said, and that's why the role of state is to further that goal of individual in achieving the highest good. So he said that there should be the state should play a positive role rather than becoming the, you can say, the one and all, right? And he recognized the nature of man, that man is a political animal, and we cannot suppress this quality of man to take part in politics by succumbing him or suppressing his, or you can say subordinating him in the name of higher reason to a state. Every person should have, every citizen should have play part to play in politics, right? So he also talked about personal liberty and complemented it with civic responsibility. And this was the reason why, because of this elaborate description of these things, He was called as the father of political science. So we can say that, in conclusion, we can say that Aristotle somehow advanced upon Plato. To a great extent, he succeeded in harmonizing personal liberty with civic responsibility. And he said that man is by nature a political animal. So it's his, that's why he sort of strike the middle balance, right? We can say this. Next is question number three. Kant's distinction between duties of perfect and imperfect obligation. आपको पता है कांट साहब, इनकी इंपॉर्टेंट किताब मेटाफिजिक्स ऑफ मॉरल्स, ठीक है। मेटाफिजिक्स ऑफ मॉरल्स बात होती है कैटेगोरिकल इंपेरेटिव्स की। व्हाट आर कैटेगोरिकल imperatives? In Kantian ethics, categorical imperatives are the universal moral law. And in this, he divides the duty of person into twofold. The perfect, which has to be strictly followed, and the imperfect, which are flexible in nature. ठीक है? And perfect duties are those which have to be performed in all situations without exception. There, and he said that, for example, duty not to lie. This applies in all situations. Not to commit suicide, to keep promises, not to harm others. This this keeps in all the situations. These are enforceable, universally binding. There is no exception in them. Whereas imperfect duties are those where discretion is allowed. And for example, developing one's talent, it's a imperfect duty. You may not. It's up to you, right? Duty to help others. You might not help others, but at least you should not harm is a perfect duty. You should help others is a imperfect duty. You may or may not, but you should not harm. So he said that perfect duty should be enforceable. Imperfect duty should not be enforceable, but morally commendable. We should commend the people if they follow this, right? And this distinction he made because he wanted to rationally structure the moral theories and to say that act only to the maxim, which you can at the same time will that it should become a universal law. So he wanted that people should understand the difference between perfect and imperfect duty. Perfect duty all should follow without exception. Imperfect duty should be encouraged, commended to be followed, right? So this was about this. We'll give the model pointers in the PDF. Next is, in the age of individualism and universal franchise, what role does caste play in body politics? So we can say that this is a topic 3 plus topic 10 mixed question. ठीक है, कास्ट भी आ गया इसमें और इंडिविजुअल स्टेट वाला रोल भी आ गया. सो अगेन यहाँ पे भी एक टर्म आ गई इंडिविजुअलिज्म. अभी हमने बात करी इंडिविजुअलिज्म क्या होता है. इट्स अ वर्ल्ड व्यू दैट प्रमोट्स पर्सनल अटोनॉमी पर्सनल फ्रीडम, राइट. एंड यूनिवर्सल फ्रेंचाइज में क्या है. यूनिवर्सल फ्रेंचाइज टॉक्स अबाउट इक्वल पॉलिटिकल पार्टिसिपेशन to all who have attained a certain age, right? They should be given equal political participation, right to vote and be elected. What is caste? Caste is the hierarchical system in India, right? This hierarchical system, which is rigid in structure, based on the notion of purity and pollution. Purity and pollution, rigid in structure, right? And occupational competencies के basis पे होता है ये. और यहाँ प्योरिटी पोल्यूशन के नोशन होते हैं, राइट. एंड दिस कास्ट सिस्टम कंटिन्यूज टू influence the electoral politics and governance in India and India specifically, right? So individualism को बता दिया, यूनिवर्सल फ्रेंचाइज बता दिया कास्ट सिस्टम कैसे इलेक्टोरल पॉलिटिक्स को गवर्नेंस को अफेक्ट करता है, ये लिंकिंग पैरा के अंदर. देन लेट्स गो टू द बॉडी. इन बॉडी विल टॉक अबाउट कास्ट एज पॉलिटिकल आइडेंटिटी. So caste affiliations, as you know, and you have studied in general studies also, दैट कास्ट एफिलिएशन, लाइक किस कास्ट से मैं आता हूँ, दे इट अफेक्ट्स द इलेक्टोरल बिहेवियर, एंड ऑल्सो पार्टीज सेलेक्ट द कैंडिडेट बेस्ड ऑन देयर कास्ट एफिलिएशन. फॉर एग्जाम्पल बीएसपी है, कुछ तो बिल्कुल कास्ट बेस्ड पार्टीज ही हैं, बीएसपी, बहुजन समाज पार्टी एक्सेट्रा. कास्ट कोएलिशन बनाते हैं, कास्ट पॉलिटिक्स बनाते हैं, कास्ट की बेसिस पे आ, वो लोग है ना, इलेक्शन के सामने वाले लड़ने को वो देते हैं, राइट, टिकट्स देते हैं. तो दैट इज देयर. देन वी कैन से दैट द कास्ट हैज द रोल. अब कास्ट का रोल बताना है हमको, है ना, बॉडी पॉलिटिक्स के. तो पहले बता दिया कि पॉलिटिकल आइडेंटिटी के तौर पे. दूसरा, पॉजिटिव भी बताना पड़ेगा कि भाई कास्ट एक तरीके से डेमोक्रेटिक एम्पावरमेंट का भी काम कर रही है, जिससे जो मार्जिनलाइज लोग हैं, दे आर असर्टिंग देयर आइडेंटिटीज एंड डिमांडिंग राइट्स. ठीक है, दे आर असर्टिंग देयर आइडेंटिटी. राइज ऑफ दलित लीडरशिप, राइज ऑफ दलित एंड ओबीसी लीडरशिप, दलित कैपिटलिज्म, कई कई टर्म सुनी होगी आपने, राइट. फिर रोल ऑफ रिजर्वेशन आ जाता है यहाँ पे. अफर्मेटिव एक्शन से ने ना, अफर्मेटिव एक्शन ने क्या किया, एक तरीके से कास्ट को इंस्टीट्यूशनलाइज कर दिया, कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनलाइज कर दिया, इंस्टीट्यूशनलाइज एंड कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनलाइज कर दिया. एक तरीके से आप बोल सकते हो, इट हैज कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनलाइज्ड कास्ट, because now caste is a separate category, although the purpose is social justice, but it perpetuates caste consciousness. सोशल जस्टिस था पर्पस, बट क्या हो गया, इससे कास्ट कॉन्शियसनेस ज्यादा हो गई लोगों के अंदर डेवलप. दिस इज अ रिस्क, राइट. सो एंड ऑल्सो इन यू कैन से गवर्नेंस के अंदर ब्यूरोक्रेट्स एडमिनिस्ट्रेटिव डिसीजन आर ऑफन रिफ्लेक्टेड बाय कास्ट कैलकुलेशंस. वही कौन से कास्ट के लोग किधर हैं, उसके बेसिस पे, कास्ट कैलकुलेशन के बेसिस पे डिसीजन लिए जाते हैं. तो बहुत सारे चीजें जो है वो इफेक्ट होती है कास्ट के तरीके से. So finally, you can say that despite individualism and universal right, caste is still embedded in India's political fabric. And you can quote Dr. B.R. Ambedkar here, who said that political democracy cannot last unless there is at the base of it social democracy. And since until or unless there is social democracy in India, caste will continue to play its role, a significant role. Right? Next is question number 5. Evaluate whether social contract theory adequately addresses the different issues of human rights. What are human rights? यही बता दो यहाँ पे. Human rights are the basic moral claims which are inherent to all individuals. These are claims, moral claims which are inherent to all individuals. वहीं पे social contract क्या है, अभी बताया आपको. Which talks about mutual agreement among people for their rights, protection and collective governance, right. अब बात ये है, the question is whether rights are conditional or inalienable. क्या ये कंडीशनल है कि इनएलिएबल है, राइट. तो ये आपको इसमें बताना है कि हाउ वेदर सोशल कॉन्ट्रैक्ट थ्योरी एडिक्वेटली एड्रेसेस द डिफरेंट इश्यूज ऑफ ह्यूमन राइट. ठीक है, तो व्हाट आर द डिफरेंट इश्यूज ऑफ ह्यूमन राइट्स? व्हाट आर द डिफरेंट इश्यूज ऑफ ह्यूमन राइट्स, बताइए. डिफरेंट इश्यूज ऑफ ह्यूमन राइट्स ये आता है कि भाई ह्यूमन डिग्निटी, इक्वालिटी, जस्टिस, ठीक है, इनको इनको फॉलो होना रिगार्डलेस ऑफ सोशल कॉन्ट्रैक्ट. यूडीएचआर के अंदर इसके बारे में बात हुई है, राइट. While Universal Declaration of Human Rights say that human rights are universal and unconditional and beyond contractual origin. Contractual किसी कॉन्ट्रैक्ट पे किसी चीज बेस्ड नहीं है वो. They are beyond everything. They are universal in nature, unconditional in nature, right? Whereas social contract theory जो है वो बात करती है कि राइट्स कॉन्ट्रैक्ट के थ्रू दी जाते हैं एंड दे आर नॉट इनहेरेंट। इसका डिफरेंस समझना क्यों पूछा उन्होंने। ह्यूमन राइट्स थ्योरी कहती है कि राइट्स आर इनहेरेंट, दे आर नॉट थ्रू एनी कॉन्ट्रैक्ट। सोशल कॉन्ट्रैक्ट कहता है कि राइट्स कम थ्रू कॉन्ट्रैक्ट, जैसे लॉ की थ्योरी ऑफ नेचुरल राइट्स, ठीक है, जो कि मॉडर्न ह्यूमन राइट्स को के लिए एक फाउंडेशन तैयार करती है। लॉक ने खुद सोशल कॉन्ट्रैक्ट की थ्योरी दी। रूसो ने बात करी जनरल विल की, वो टॉक्स अबाउट कलेक्टिव रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी, राइट। बट जो सोशल कॉन्ट्रैक्ट है वो, क्योंकि इसको कॉन्ट्रैक्टेरियन एक कॉन्ट्रैक्टेरियन वो दे देता है इसको लेप हर राइट्स की थ्योरी को, इसलिए ये इश्यूज पैदा करता है। इट इग्नोर्स द इनहेरेंट नेचर ऑफ ह्यूमन राइट्स and it also ignores the structural injustices like which are based on caste, religion, race, economic disparities, etc. Okay, so these are the issues, but you can finally say that human rights should be seen as inherent despite of any contractual obligation. However, social contracts have contributed towards the modern understanding of rights, and as अमर्त्य सेन का भी कोट है इसके रिगार्ड में, which I remember now, that human rights, he said, are best seen as the ethical demands and social commitments and not just legal instruments. So human rights जो है वो एक डिमांड्स हैं, एथिकल डिमांड, सोशल कमिटमेंट है, सोसाइटी का कमिटमेंट है दूसरे ह्यूमन के प्रति, दैट वी हैव द obligation to protect the rights of all the people irrespective of their race, religion, caste, gender, place of birth. So they should not be made a legal instrument. They should not be made under the scrutiny of any contractual obligation, right? So this is how you can end it. We'll provide the model answer for all of this. I hope that you must have understood the demand of the question here. So from tomorrow onwards, we will be doing topic number 4. Be ready for that. All the best. Keep on revising and reading. Thank you.